For most of recorded galactic history, strength was defined by silence, by the absence of hesitation, by the ability to act without feeling. The elder civilizations believed emotion was a flaw, a malfunction of biology, a weakness to be engineered out, a relic of primitive evolution. And when humanity first reached the stars, that belief hardened into certainty. Because humans were loud. They spoke with their hands. They argued openly. They laughed too freely. They mourned their dead instead of discarding them as lost assets. They loved. And in a galaxy that worshipped efficiency above all else, love was considered the most dangerous liability of all. The Galactic Concord was not a place, it was an idea made physical. A vast orbital structure the size of a small moon, forged from metals no longer found in nature. It floated at the heart of known space, equidistant from the major powers, a neutral ground where wars were prevented not by morality, but by mathematics. Every civilization had a seat there, except humanity. Not at first. When the human delegation finally arrived, their ship was scanned 3 times more than protocol required. Their technology was deemed adequate, their biology unstable, their psychology excessively emotional, the report concluded. The words were not meant as an insult. They were a diagnosis. High Arbiter Kothrex of the Varelian Compact observed the humans from the upper dais, his segmented eyes narrowing behind a veil of refracted light. Varelians had evolved without facial muscles capable of expression. Emotion, for them, was something that happened internally and was quickly suppressed. Their empire spanned 12 systems and had never lost a war. Not because they were cruel, but because they were calm. They gesture constantly, Kothrex noted aloud, his voice translated into smooth, neutral tones. An inefficient expenditure of energy. Beside him, the Orlith delegate, a being of crystalline filaments and harmonic resonance, shifted slightly. They modulate their voices unpredictably, the Orlith added. Emotionally driven communication patterns. High variance. Low reliability. A third voice joined them, colder than the others. They cry. The speaker was Director Seln of the Korth Dominion. His species had eliminated the neurological capacity for grief millennia ago. During lost simulations, Seln continued, humans experience cognitive impairment. Decision-making deteriorates. Performance drops. Kothrex's mandibles clicked once, a Varelian equivalent of agreement. Then it is settled, he said. They are fragile. The humans, standing far below, could not hear the full discussion. But they felt it. They always did. Ambassador Elena Ward stood at the forefront of the delegation. She was older than most diplomats sent to first contact summits, her hair threaded with silver, her posture straight but unforced. She had lost 2 siblings during Earth's final unification wars, and she remembered every single name. Behind her stood soldiers who were not meant to be here, men and women in ceremonial uniforms, chosen not for intimidation, but for symbolism. They represented the branch of humanity the galaxy feared the least, because these humans wore their hearts openly. The Arbiter's voice echoed through the chamber. Humanity of soul, Kothrex declared. You petition for provisional membership in the Galactic Concord. Yes, Ambassador Ward replied, her voice steady. We believe cooperation is preferable to isolation. A ripple passed through the chamber, an exchange of data pulses, microresonances, chemical signals. The galaxy had heard this before. From civilizations that no longer existed. You are aware, Kothrex continued, that membership requires demonstrated stability, predictability, emotional regulation. Ward nodded. We are. And yet, the Arbiter said, your species exhibits what our analysts describe as excessive empathy. Ward allowed herself a small smile. Yes, she said. We do. There it was. Confirmation. Aurolith filaments dimmed slightly, a sign of skepticism. Court Director Selm leaned forward. Explain, Selm said, why the Concord should entrust galactic security to a species whose decisions are influenced by affection, grief, and, his voice flattened, love. The word translated poorly. It always did. Ward did not answer immediately. She looked around the chamber, at beings who had never sung to their children, never carved memorials for fallen comrades, never risked everything for someone who could offer nothing in return. We don't see those things as weaknesses, she said at last. We see them as reasons. Kothrex tilted his head fractionally. Reasons, he repeated, are irrelevant in conflict. Only outcomes matter. Ward met his gaze. Then judge us by ours. The chamber fell silent. Then Kothrex spoke words that would echo across the stars. Humanity will be tested. The test came sooner than anyone expected. 3 cycles later, at the far edge of Concord-controlled space, the Kairos expanse went dark. An entire trade corridor, 27 inhabited worlds, dozens of stations, billions of lives, fell silent in under an hour. No distress calls. No warning. Just absence. The culprit was identified almost immediately. The Threxian swarm. The Threxians were not conquerors. They were not negotiators. They were consumption made intelligent. A hive species that moved like a storm front, stripping systems of biomass and moving on before defenders could mobilize. Entire civilizations had vanished beneath their advance. The Concord had protocols for this. Cold ones. Mathematical ones. And they worked most of the time. But the Kairos expanse lay too far. Response fleets would arrive late. Too late. The Emergency Council convened within hours. Kothrex presided, his voice sharp with controlled urgency. Projected losses exceed acceptable thresholds, he said. However, full mobilization would expose core systems. The Aurolith delegate pulsed a grim harmonic. Containment probability, 42%. Director Selm's voice was mercilessly precise. Sacrifices, regrettable, but logical. The chamber accepted this, because this was how the galaxy survived, by choosing who would be left behind. A human voice broke the consensus. Unacceptable. Every sensory organ in the chamber turned toward Ambassador Ward. Explain, Kothrex said. There are people in the Kairos expanse, Ward said. Families. Colonists. Children. Yes, Selm replied. And saving them risks greater loss elsewhere. Ward's jaw tightened. We can reach them faster, she said. Kothrex's eyes narrowed. Your fleet is modest. It is, Ward agreed. But we don't calculate risk the same way you do. The Arbiter paused. This is not a request, he warned. The Concord has decided. Ward took a breath. Then she said the words that changed everything. Humanity will go anyway. Aurolith resonance spiked. That would be irrational, they said. It would be emotional, Selm added. and fuel. Ward did not deny it. Yes, she said quietly. It would be. Then she looked up at the galaxy that had already written off billions. But we don't abandon people, she said. Not when there's even a chance. Silence followed. Not stunned silence. Uneasy silence. Kothrek studied the human ambassador for a long moment. You understand, he said slowly, that failure will confirm every concern raised about your species. Ward nodded. And success? She asked. The Arbiter said nothing, because no one in that chamber believed success was possible. Within the hour, the human fleet launched. Not the largest, not the most advanced, but every ship carried something no Concord vessel did. Names painted on their hulls. Messages etched near airlocks. For those we love. For those we lost. For those we haven't met yet. And as the fleet vanished into faster-than-light transit, the galaxy watched, certain it was witnessing a tragedy born of weakness. They did not yet understand. They were about to learn. The first thing the galaxy noticed was the speed. Human ships should not have reached the Caro's expanse that quickly. Their drives were efficient, yes, but not exceptional. Their hulls were durable, but not cutting-edge. Their fleet doctrine, according to Concord analysts, relied too heavily on crew intuition rather than algorithmic optimization. And yet, the human task force emerged from faster-than-light space nearly 16 hours ahead of projected arrival time. That discrepancy triggered dozens of alerts across the Concorde's observation arrays. Not alarms. Questions. High Arbiter Kothrex observed the sensor feeds in silence as data streamed across his peripheral vision. How? He asked. No one answered immediately. The Orla delegate emitted a faint, uncertain resonance. They are overclocking their transit engines beyond safe tolerances, the Orla said at last. Structural stress indicators exceed recommended margins. Director Selm processed this information without visible reaction. Then they will arrive damaged, he concluded. Irrational. Kothrex's mandibles clicked once. Continue observation. The Caro's expanse was already dying. Entire orbital habitats lay dark, their power signatures consumed or extinguished. Planetary atmospheres were choked with particulate matter where the Threxian swarm had passed through lower orbits, harvesting biomass with mechanical precision. The swarm did not destroy out of malice. They optimized. They stripped worlds to sustainability thresholds, then moved on. For them, resistance was simply an inefficiency to be corrected. The first human ship to enter the combat zone was the UNS Ardent Resolve. It did not wait for reinforcements. It did not form a defensive perimeter. It transmitted a single open-channel message across all frequencies. This is Captain Marcus Hale of the Ardent Resolve, the voice said, steady, calm, unmistakably human. To anyone who can hear us, hold on. We're here. The message was unnecessary. No one expected survivors. But the humans sent it anyway. Threxian vessels responded immediately. Sleek, asymmetrical constructs surged forward, their movements coordinated by hive intelligence faster than any centralized command. Concord combat simulations predicted the Ardent Resolve would last less than 90 seconds. They were almost right. The ship's forward shields collapsed in 74 seconds. Its portside armor breached shortly after. Alarms screamed across the bridge, but no panic followed. Divert auxiliary power to life support, Captain Hale ordered. But sir, an officer began. Weapons, weapons, stay online, Hale interrupted. If we're going down, we're taking something with us. The bridge crew moved with practiced coordination, not frantic, not rigid. Focused. Human. The ardent resolve did not retreat. It accelerated directly into the densest cluster of Threxian vessels, its remaining weapons firing continuously. When its reactor went critical, Captain Hale opened a final channel. "This is ardent resolve," he said. "Evac ships, run now." Then the ship detonated. The explosion tore a hole through the swarm's formation, vaporizing 6 Threxian vessels and scattering the rest. Concord analysts recalculated. Human losses, catastrophic. Threxian losses, negligible. And yet, something had changed. "That maneuver served no strategic purpose," Director Seln said flatly. "It delayed the swarm's advance by 32 seconds, the Orlith added. Cothrex remained silent. Because in those 32 seconds, something impossible had happened. Escape pods, human and non-human alike, had slipped through the disruption and vanished toward the outer system. Survivors. More human ships arrived. Not as a unified wall, but as individuals. Each vessel entered combat independently, choosing targets not by optimal damage output, but by proximity to evacuation corridors, damaged stations, and fleeing civilian transports. It made no sense. And yet, the Threxian advance began to slow. "They are prioritizing non-combat objectives," the Orlith said, their resonance tinged with confusion. "This reduces overall fleet efficiency." "Yes," Seln replied. "It is wasteful." Cothrex leaned forward slightly. "And yet," he said, "the swarm is adapting." Threxian vessels reoriented, abandoning consumption patterns to intercept human ships directly. The swarm was learning. So were the humans. A human frigate, the UNS Kestrel, lost its engines early in the engagement. Drifting. Burning. Exposed. Standard protocol dictated abandonment. The Kestrel did not self-destruct. Instead, it transmitted a distress call, not to the fleet, to the swarm. It flooded local space with electromagnetic noise, false signatures, erratic energy spikes. The Threxians responded instinctively, converging on the apparent anomaly. They never reached it. The Kestrel's remaining crew manually overloaded its power core. The resulting blast annihilated another cluster of swarm vessels. Cothrex's eyes narrowed. "They are baiting them," he said. "Yes," the Orlith agreed slowly. "By exploiting predictable threat response behaviors." Director Seln paused. "That tactic was not in their projected doctrine." "No," Cothrex replied. "It wasn't." Hours passed. Human ships continued to fall. But the swarm was no longer advancing unchecked. Evacuation corridors remained open far longer than any model predicted. Civilian vessels, many belonging to non-human species, escaped the expanse under human escort. And something else began to appear in the data. Human ships were coordinating without centralized command. No single flagship. No hive mind. Just trust. "Explain this," Cothrex demanded as new projections appeared. The Orlith hesitated, a rare occurrence. "They are making assumptions," they said, "based on shared values rather than explicit orders." Seln's voice sharpened. "Assumptions lead to failure." "Not always," Cothrex said quietly, because the humans were still holding. On board the UNS Valiant Dawn, Lieutenant Aisha Rahman stared at the tactical display as enemy contacts multiplied. "We can't hold this corridor," an ensign said. "We need to fall back." Rahman shook her head. "Not yet." "But command? Command isn't here," Rahman replied. "Those transports are." She opened a channel. "All civilian ships," she said. "Stay behind us. We'll make the gap." "How?" came the reply, frightened, "Alien." Rahman smiled, though no one could see it. "Because we said we would." The Valiant Dawn's shields failed. Then its weapons. Still, it did not retreat. When the last civilian ship jumped to safety, Rahman ordered the crew to abandon ship. She stayed behind. Someone had to trigger the final burn. In the Concorde chamber, silence had taken on a different quality. Not dismissal. Attention. "They choose death," Seln said at last. Repeatedly. "Yes," Kothrex replied. "That is not strength." "No," the Arbiter said. "It is not." He watched another human ship vanish in a flash of light. "But it is not weakness either." The swarm began to withdraw. Not retreat. Reposition. Their losses were still acceptable, but their efficiency curves had dipped below optimal thresholds. The humans were too unpredictable. Too costly. The Threxians shifted their focus toward the outer systems, toward easier prey. And for the first time in recorded history, the swarm disengaged from an active harvest. The human fleet was shattered. More than half their ships destroyed. Casualty reports incomplete. But the Caro's expanse was no longer silent. Emergency beacons flickered back to life. Survivors, millions of them, were alive because humans had refused to calculate them away. Kothrex leaned back slowly. "They should have failed," he said. "They did fail," Seln replied. "By every rational metric." The Arbiter's gaze remained fixed on the stars. "And yet," he said, "look at what remains." Far from the Concorde, among wreckage and fading fires, human ships gathered the living. They tended wounds, alien and human alike. They spoke softly. They cried openly. They mourned their dead. And they prepared to do it all again. Because that was what they did. The galaxy had called them emotional. And in the burning silence of the Caro's expanse, emotion had held the line. The Caro's expanse did not return to silence. It returned to sound. Crackling emergency beacons. Fractured transmissions. Voices, frightened, exhausted, alive. For the first time since the Threxian swarm had entered Concorde space, the data streams told a story no model could fully explain. Survival. High Arbiter Kothrex convened a second emergency session of the Galactic Concorde. Attendance was complete. Even delegates who rarely engaged beyond procedural obligation were present, their attention no longer divided. The humans had forced the galaxy to look. "Confirmed survival rate," the Orlith delegate reported, their harmonic tone subdued, almost reverent. 17% of the Caro's population remains alive." Director Seln reacted immediately. "That figure is statistically impossible," he said. "Pre-engagement projections estimated survival at less than 2%. "Yes," the Orlith replied. "And yet, there they are." Images flooded the chamber. Alien children wrapped in thermal blankets aboard human ships. Medics tending to physiology they barely understood. Human engineers holding together failing alien life support systems with nothing but improvised tools and stubborn determination. No one spoke. Because no one had prepared for this. Kothrex watched a particular feed longer than the rest. A human woman knelt beside a wounded Korthian civilian. A species that did not express pain in ways humans easily recognized. "I know it hurts," the woman said softly, her voice trembling. "Just stay with me. Please." The Korthian's translator hesitated, then rendered the reply. "Why? Are you still here?" The human swallowed. "Because you are." The feed ended. Kothrex exhaled slowly. "They are risking contagion," Seln said. "Biological incompatibility alone. They are risking everything," Kothrex corrected. Interviews began to arrive from the survivors. Concord Protocol dictated debriefings be clinical, objective. The humans ignored that. They listened. Oralist survivor testimony, translated from resonance to language. "We believe the humans were irrational. They wept when their ships were lost. They shouted the names of the dead into open space. We assumed despair. But they kept fighting. Not because they believed they would win, but because they believed we should live." Another report, this one from a Varelian colony ship. "The human escort vessel remained behind after our jump point destabilized. We urged them to retreat. They responded only, 'Not until you're through.' They did not follow us. We now understand why." Director Selm processed each report in silence. Finally he spoke. "They are forming attachments," he said, "to non-conspecifics." "Yes," Kothrex replied. "They are. That is dangerous." Kothrex did not disagree. "No," he said. "It is." On board the human medical ship UNS Merce's Wake, the atmosphere was heavy with exhaustion. Dr. Luis Moreno had not slept in 36 hours. He moved from bed to bed, adjusting equipment, murmuring reassurances that transcended language barriers. A young orolith, its crystalline structure fractured, emitted a weak harmonic. Moreno paused. "What is it?" he asked. The translator took a moment. "Why do you grieve?" the orolith asked. "For those who are already dead?" Moreno's hand stilled. "Because they mattered," he said simply. The orolith processed this. "And when you die?" it asked. Moreno smiled, tired and gentle. "Then I hope someone grieves for me too." That answer would be replayed across Concord networks for years, because it revealed something the galaxy had never needed to consider. Legacy. The Threxian swarm did not leave Concord space entirely. They repositioned beyond the expanse, adapting, studying, preparing. And this time, they were not underestimating humanity. A new threat projection appeared in the Concord chamber. "If the swarm returns in force," the orolith said, "human defensive capacity will be insufficient." Director Seln nodded. "They have exhausted themselves. Their losses are unsustainable." Kothrex considered this. "And yet," he said, "they request permission to remain in the expanse." "Remain?" Seln repeated. "For what purpose?" Kothrex gestured to the live feeds. "Reconstruction." The humans were not leaving. They established temporary habitats. They repaired alien stations. They shared food, power, medicine, without contracts, without guarantees. Concord logistics algorithms flagged the effort as inefficient beyond acceptable limits. Human crews ignored the alerts. Ambassador Elena Ward returned to the Concord chamber days later. Her uniform was unpressed. Her eyes were red. But her voice did not waver. We're staying, she said, as long as we're needed. Kothrex studied her. You have proven your courage, he said. But courage does not rebuild worlds. Ward met his gaze. No, she said. People do. Director Selm leaned forward. You have altered the swarm's behavior, he said. They will adapt. Next time, they will strike harder. Ward nodded. We know. And you would still choose this path? Selm pressed. Despite the cost? Ward did not answer immediately. She thought of Captain Hale, Lieutenant Ramon, names already etched into memorial walls. Yes, she said. Why? Selm demanded. Ward's voice softened. Because next time, she said, it might be our people. And we hoped someone would come. The chamber was silent. Not because they disagreed, but because the logic was contagious. Kothrex rose from his seat. For millennia, he said, we have defined strength as the absence of emotion. Humanity has demonstrated a different model. He turned to the assembled delegates. One that transforms loss into resolve, fear into action, attachment into defense. Selm's voice was quieter than before. That model is unstable. Kothrex inclined his head. Yes, he said. And yet it endures. The Concord voted. Not unanimously, but decisively. Humanity was granted provisional membership. Not because they were efficient. Not because they were predictable. But because, when faced with extinction, they had chosen compassion. Far from the chamber, in the quiet of a half-rebuilt station, a human child sat beside an alien elder. They shared food. They shared silence. They shared the future. The galaxy had begun to understand what humans fought against. But it was only just beginning to learn what they fought for. The Threxian swarm returned without warning. They did not announce themselves with probes or gradual incursions. They came as a wave, a darkness that blotted out stars, bending sensor arrays beneath a sheer mass of coordinated life and machinery. Their vessels had changed, armor patterns refined, energy dispersal fields tuned specifically to human weapon signatures. They had learned. And in doing so, they committed their final mistake. High Arbiter Kothrex received the alert while observing reconstruction efforts in the Caro's expanse. Swarm emergence confirmed. The Orlith delegate transmitted, resonance strained. Vector direct. Kothrex did not hesitate. Notify all Concord fleets, he ordered. Full mobilization. The response was immediate and insufficient. Even united, the Concord's forces would arrive too late. The humans knew it. Ambassador Elena Ward stood aboard the UNS Everfaith as the alert echoed through the ship. The bridge went silent, not with fear, but with understanding. They had known this moment would come. Ward opened a fleet-wide channel. This is Ambassador Ward, she said. You all know what's happening. Faces appeared on the display. Pilots, engineers, medics, soldiers. Tired. Determined. Some of you have asked what our orders are, Ward continued. Here they are. She paused. Protect the people. Buy time. Hold the line. No cheers followed. No speeches. Just nods. Because humans did not need inspiration anymore. They had purpose. The Threxian advance was relentless. Human ships fell faster this time. The swarm did not cluster. They did not pursue decoys. They did not hesitate. They drove forward with singular focus, toward the rebuilt habitats, the refugee convoys, the lives the humans had refused to abandon. And that was where the swarm miscalculated. The humans did not form a fleet. They formed a shield. Each ship positioned itself not for maximum firepower, but for maximum protection, between the swarm and everyone else. On the UNS Last Light, Commander June Park watched enemy contacts flood the tactical display. "We won't survive this," an officer said quietly. Park nodded. "I know." He opened a channel to engineering. "Set the reactor to manual override." A pause. Then, "Sir, that's a one-way command." "Yes," Park said. "I'm aware." He turned back to the bridge. "Anyone who wants to leave, go. No one stays because they feel they have to." No one moved. Park exhaled slowly. "Then let's make it count." Across the expanse, similar moments unfolded. A human corvette rammed a Threxian command node, tearing it apart at the cost of its own hull. A medical ship stayed behind to evacuate an alien hospital, its weapons long spent, its engines failing. A single human fighter, out of ammunition, flew directly into the heart of a swarm vessel sensory core, blinding it for precious minutes. Each act, by itself, meant nothing. Together, they meant time. In the Concorde chamber, the feeds played in stunned silence. Director Selm spoke at last, his voice stripped of its usual certainty. "They are not fighting to win." "No," Kothrex replied. "They are fighting to delay," Selm said. "To endure." Kothrex's gaze did not waver. "They are fighting to protect." Something unprecedented happened within the Threxian hive. Confusion. Not fear, but contradiction. The swarm's predictive models faltered. Human ships did not break when expected. They did not retreat when overwhelmed. They did not abandon doomed positions. They stayed. Again, and again, and again. The swarm had evolved to counter weapons, not devotion. Concorde reinforcements arrived at last. Not into a battlefield, into a wall. Human wreckage, burning, drifting, broken, marked a line the swarm had not crossed. Behind it, millions lived. The combined firepower of the Concorde struck the swarm's exposed flank. This time, the Threxians did retreat. Fully. For the first time in their recorded existence. Afterward, there was no celebration. Only counting. Ships lost. Lives lost. Names added to walls that were already too full. Ambassador Ward stood before the Concorde one final time. Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with weight. "We didn't save everyone," she said. "We know that." She looked around the chamber. "But we saved as many as we could." Director Selm rose. Slowly. When he spoke, the galaxy listened. "We believed emotion impaired judgment," he said. "That it led to inefficiency, instability." He paused. "We were wrong." The words were not easy, but they were honest. High Arbiter Kothrex addressed the Concorde. "Humanity has demonstrated a form of strength we did not anticipate," he said. "Not through domination, not through detachment, but through refusal." He turned to Ambassador Ward. "You refuse to abandon the weak. You refuse to accept acceptable losses. You refuse to become what the galaxy expected." Kothrex inclined his head. "And in doing so, you changed us." Humanity was granted full membership that day. Not as warriors, not as saviors, but as guardians. Years later, historians would struggle to categorize what happened in the Caro's expanse. No new superweapon had been unveiled. No tactical doctrine rewritten. Just a simple, dangerous idea made manifest, that some lives were worth more than efficiency. In time, other species would begin to adopt human customs. Memorials. Names. Stories. Emotion. Not because it was easy, but because it endured. And when the Threxian swarm was finally defeated, decades later, it was not by superior firepower alone. It was by civilizations that had learned, from humans, how to stand together. Because in the end, they had called humans emotional. They had called them weak. And that was their final mistake. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe StoryVix for more human stories from the stars.